体力。面上佛堂，参加3鞠躬、1鞠躬、再鞠躬、3鞠躬，参加各位点传师1鞠躬，开班1鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated. So it may be a little disconcerting that we are bowing to this blank space or the projector, but that is because we're not paying respect to any idols or figurines. We're paying respect to this process that is taking place. The exchange of ideas, the study of ancient wisdom, that's what we are paying respects to. So that's the reason for that mini ritual. So Bill, that was my little introductory remark. Whenever you are ready, I can mute my microphone.
Thank you much, and welcome everybody. Very happy to see we have visitors. It is not much of a day for driving up here in Indiana, so the folks who, and that's everybody here who can get online, have done so. I've heard from them and recommended that, you know, we not drive. Let's all stay warm and safe. 7 inches of snow isn't terrible, but it takes the road crews a while to get out and clean everything up, get salt down, and what have you. By tomorrow morning, everything will be passable and doing well. Meanwhile, here we are, and it's another wonderful Sunday to share in the process of learning and understanding the Tao teachings. This morning's topic came from my #1 student, Mike Williams, who talked about a situation, I guess, that he got into a while back, pertaining to handling situations that were perhaps a bit threatening, martial situations. For those of you who don't know, I've been a long-time practitioner of martial sciences, and I teach Tai Chi Chuan, which includes perhaps the original martial science that ever existed within it. And philosophically, because it was originally divined by a Taoist monk in a Taoist temple, the philosophy of the Tao flows in, around, and through everything that is Tai Chi Chuan related. And so Mike said, you know, the thing that I've been pondering is this scenario here. Let's say you're waiting at a bus stop and you see, you know, a stranger approaching, one hand in his pocket and the other one balled up in a fist, and you know, you're watching this person approaching you, and normally that causes a state of anxiety, a state of tension. One starts to wonder what this person's intent is, what they're going to do, whether or not they're going to try to hurt you. And so the question there is, what do we do when this scenario happens? And stuff like this happens every day when we're out just wandering around, right? When somebody approaches us that we don't know, do we prepare to fight them? Do we prepare to run away from them? Do we stand there and stare off into space and hope nothing happens? Or do we shoot the stranger first and then, you know, argue that he was obviously a bad guy to begin with anyway and deserves shooting? Hopefully we're not picking options. If we are, I'd like to recommend a much better solution. And of course, it wouldn't be a solution if there weren't a Tao-centric lesson attached to this, and absolutely there is, I promise. It is interesting that many of the situations that I train people to deal with in terms of martial sciences training parallel situations that we run into in just day-to-day life. Okay, and what I would say in this particular scenario, is that in seeing someone approaching me, first we ought to avoid the knee-jerk reaction. If we attempt to preemptively form a solution where a problem doesn't exist, then we may force another person's hand into doing something that maybe they didn't even remotely consider doing until we precipitated an action on their part. Second of all, we need to have all the information we can have before we act, and so observing that situation becomes much more important than determining what we're going to do about it. We need to see everything we can see, assimilate all the information that we can assimilate. Okay, the stranger has one hand balled up in a fist. What is his facial expression? Does he appear to be having a really rough day? Does he appear to have, the body language and demeanor of an individual who might be dangerous to us? And perhaps to even go so far as to trust that that individual doesn't have a malicious intent towards us. And I'm going to stop right here and say this is not an education on how to become a victim. Okay, if you feel that your safety is threatened, by all means remove yourself from the situation, get to somewhere safe. Get a hold of the police or whoever's available, and make sure that you don't get hurt. But very, very often we find that simply observing what another person is doing can help us to understand what their intention is. Okay, and what's the Dow connection here? What's the lesson we're supposed to take away from that? Well, we face tense situations in life every day, at work, at the grocery store, at the gas station, at home, all the time, with primarily other people. That's where we have the bulk of our tension. I very rarely have tense moments with my dog, but even within the family, there are occasional tense moments, and every now and again, just out in plain old daily life, there are situations that raise tension and cause anxiety and make us a little guarded. In fact, I'm going to tell you about one here in a bit. And so it isn't only about protecting our physical safety and preventing ourselves from being injured or drawn into a violent situation. It's more about managing the everyday conflicts and tensions that pop up around us, all the time. When those things happen, just like the scenario that Mike painted for me, we need to observe and understand what the other person's intent is. Okay, we need to make wise choices regarding what the other person's saying and doing, and what the real meaning is, as opposed to using a knee-jerk reaction or a preemptive sort of a attitude to put the other person off balance and away from us. And we need to understand how to make wise choices in our perceptions and in our thoughts about other people, so that they and we can both survive and thrive without creating a lot of additional tension and derision between people. Okay. Now, once again, okay, I spend a good deal of time specifically teaching people how not to be a victim. Okay, so please don't take this as an admonition to put yourself in danger simply for the education of learning how to deal with conflict. There are easier and much more effective methods to do that. But in those occasions where you're safe first, okay, there's always the opportunity to learn to handle those interactions and those tensions perhaps in a better and more peaceful way. Okay. On February the 19th, not even a whole month after I purchased my new Toyota Sienna van. A driver of a little Buick Sentra doing 30 miles an hour ran a red light and plowed my front end under. Just about, mangled my driver's side front fender. Fortunately, missed the driver's side door, didn't deploy the airbags, no one was hurt, and that's a wonderful thing. I was, of course, not overjoyed that somebody had just hit my poor new van that I hadn't even had a whole month yet. But it's okay. I had the old van that I owned previously anyway, by way of how the deal worked, so I wasn't without transportation. I had to inconvenience my wife momentarily to come pick me up after work, but it was okay. When the person who hit me got out of his car, it was apparent, let's say, that he looked like an old hippie, long hair, baseball cap, camo jacket, what have you. And my initial impression was that because his car was older and he didn't quite look like a lot of the folks that I deal with professionally, that this situation may have been difficult, that it may have not gone quite as well as it could have. And my first impression of this gentleman turned out to be very wrong, but I was able to discover that primarily because rather than hopping out of my van and jumping up and down and giving him all kinds of grief because he just smacked my van that I hadn't had for a whole month yet, I bothered to look past the long hair and the beard and mustache and what have you, down to a patch on his fatigue jacket, which happened to be a U.S. Air Force pararescue patch. And I decided at that moment in time, because I know a little something about what pararescue means and what those folks do, I decided to give this guy an opportunity and not judge his intentions, demeanor, or actions based on that visual first impression, to see if perhaps there was a little more behind him than just a 2002 Buick. I was eminently surprised when he spoke to me to find that he was extremely intelligent, awfully sorry that he'd hit me, admitted that he was at fault, told the same thing to the police officer and his insurance company, and I found out some other things about him that I'm not going to share. They're of a more personal nature, but suffice it to say that over the couple of weeks while I've been getting my van fixed, I've also been talking to this guy to make sure that he and the daughter he had with him when they hit me are okay. They live about an hour and a half away from here and have business in the city at Methodist Hospital from time to time. And since it's a long way from where they live, I told him if he was ever in the city and needed anything to give me a call. And I reflected for a while on that encounter, because first of all, getting in a car accident is a tense event. It is something nobody enjoys. Most of us endure one every now and again. We always hope that we're not at fault and that we're going to be careful enough not to hit another vehicle, but they call them accidents for a reason. And so the situation on its face is tense and a breeding ground for conflict and derision and occasionally violence. And yet, by simply taking a deep breath and backing up a little bit, I was surprised by the individual who stood in front of me, because the way he presented himself and the way he looked at that particular moment didn't line up in my perception. And it forced me to consider the possibility that maybe that visual first impression is not the most important thing we should look at. And so when Mike brought this topic up, I thought, gee, what if I'd have just been putting gas in the van and he strolled up to me at the gas station? What would I have thought then? What would I have done? What would I have been prepared for? And I have to confess that initially, anyway, I would have been wary and cautious, and that's not always unexpected, you know. But I'm not sure that that was the right thing to do, and I'm not sure that that attitude would have been the right attitude to have at that point. And so I've resolved, you know, to understand those situations better. And I actually thought that I did a pretty reasonable job of understanding those situations until that one occurred. And I have had the rather humbling experience again of figuring out that I wasn't quite as smart as I thought. How is it that our perceptions of other people and situations can become so skewed? Well, we all know the answer to that. Out in Los Angeles, here in Indianapolis, and any other major city, you know, there are those folks out wandering the streets and neighborhoods whose intentions are not pure, whose motives are not honorable, and who will do what they can to get what they can from us. And over time, those repeated attempts at talking us out of our hard-earned money or whatever kind of get on our nerves, and we begin to relegate those folks to a category of people we would rather not deal with. And when we do that, the folks who begin to cross over in our mind's eye between our perception of the folks we want to deal with and our perception of the folks we don't want to deal with all kind of fall into that same general category of people that we should avoid because we don't want to be hassled, we don't want to be mugged, we don't want to be hurt, we don't want to be bothered. And that's the second half of this Tao lesson, which is that we cannot allow that perception, particularly when it may be mistaken, to rob us of our compassion and our desire to ease the suffering of other people when and where we can. Now, we talk here every now and again about how one applies these teachings in real life. And I want to be very careful to say that it is important that as followers and cultivators of the Tao teachings that we take care of ourselves first. That's not a selfishly motivated statement. That statement is motivated by the following reason. If we don't take care of ourselves and our families first, we will not have the resources to take care of others. And the absence of those resources can make our compassion and desire to be of service and help to others and to help ease their suffering empty, because we don't have the ability to go along with the desire, right? We have to learn to manage the resources we have. We have to learn not to look at people perhaps on the fringes of our periphery as being worthy of being avoided and ignored, and to kind of reconstitute our compassion and our service to other people in light of those realizations, and even every now and again to avail of ourselves of the occasional humbling experience. Cultivating the Tao teachings does not mean that we're obligated to be victims. That's not at all what it means. Okay? From day one at Wudong Mountain, the practitioners and followers of Taoism have also been some of the finest fighters and warriors this world has ever known. And true to that tradition, those very same skills are taught in my Taiji school. Okay. But what it does mean is that we need to work on our hearts and minds to remove the emotional attachments and prejudices from our initial perceptions, to not view everybody we see on the street as a potential hazard to our health, and to every now and again allow our intuition and our compassion to govern our hearts and minds just a bit. Okay, that compassion and that wisdom help us to achieve a better understanding. It was hopefully well-meant compassion and a desire to understand more than just what I saw that led to the positive interaction that occurred when this driver hit my van. And practicing that positivity is a huge goal for me, and should be for all of us. That positivity is what sets us apart from the negativity of this world and the things that it causes. That all being said, when and if the need arises, we must also be skillful and prepared, to deal with conflicts and derision and whatever pops up in front of us, without allowing those situations to victimize us, whatever that need may be. It's so easy to look at that particular thought and think about that purely in a context of some kind of physical assault. But really and truly, it is going to be much more common that those assaults are going to come at us from people we know, from people we work with, from people that we see every day, where the tensions and weight and responsibilities of our jobs and our careers and our children and heaven only knows what else weigh down on us and prevent us from being the people we ought to be. I have very rarely in my life faced any kind of a physical threat to my safety. Not too terribly many. But over the years I have faced countless threats to my peace and tranquility and genuine ease of living, as it were, that are born of following the Tao teaching, simply because I couldn't get my mind and emotions under control quickly enough to prevent somebody that was having a bad day from screwing up my entire groove. Hopefully over the years I've gotten somewhat better at that. And I am a happier person for the years of cultivating the Tao teaching. Absolutely am. But every now and again when we're not looking, one of those folks comes by, and there we go. At their hearts, these matters, okay, whether they're social or antisocial, whether they're lessons learned from martial sciences training or lessons learned from Tao cultivation, they all apply to the same lessons in life. Okay? I tell people in the Tai Chi school that I don't teach people how to fight, I teach them how to live. If you want to learn how to fight, all you got to do is go hit somebody with something, and you got to fight on your hands. Learning how to live is much more difficult. And I don't claim to be anybody's master or guru when it comes to doing that. I'm simply another soul on the path who's trying to figure it out too. We all kind of learn from each other. But those lessons all spring from the same source. The lessons of both Wudong Kung Fu and religious and philosophical Taoism all have their roots deep in the Wudong Temple. Okay, they're all upheld by the same principles, the same divine essence, the same synergy that works for us, whether we're dealing with conflict in life or dealing with conflict on the street corner. The bottom line is our lives can be full of conflict and suffering if we choose to ignore that fundamental wisdom of living in the Tao teachings. You know, the reason that I keep doing this year after year after year after year is because these teachings work, because I've seen the results in my life and in the lives of others. And in seeing those results, I'm kind of encouraged to keep going to see, you know, just exactly how far the path goes. But even if it stopped where it is, even if I never learned anything else, I would be happy and content with the progress that I've been able to make in not only easing my own suffering, but in learning to deal with conflicts and issues like those from a much healthier and much less contentious perspective. You know, there's always time for conflict and suffering and violence and pain. Those things seem to be remarkably easy to cause and to start up, and unbelievably difficult to stop once they're started. Destruction takes so much less time than creation, and is so much easier to create. But you know, the inverse to that is that there's also much less time to diffuse or redirect or end a conflict successfully before our lack of knowledge or wisdom or inability to effectively deal with the situation breeds the contention that brings about the conflict and suffering. Most of the time, we ourselves will determine how those life situations proceed as they unfold in front of us. We'll either be more or less skillful about how we deal with them, or we won't. And if we're not, then those situations may come back around and cause us a lot of pain. It is our own thoughts and our own actions that very largely will open the way for the actions of other people. And so perhaps, you know, this one rather humbling and educational experience may have helped me to learn to give some folks a break every now and again. And maybe my learning that and relating it to you might help you to do the same as well. Thank you all very much for letting me chat with you. Truly appreciate the opportunity, and I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you.